The parasha of this morning is known as Parasha Vayigash, and it means he approached, to approach. Parasha Vayigash commences with the continuation of the conversation between Judah and Joseph, that is between Yehuda and Joseph, over the fate of Benjamin, which began at the end of the previous Parasha Miketz. Parasha Vayigash, to approach, and I subtitled it the two Messiah, the two Savior. We have in this morning Parasha, we have Messiah ben Yosef, and we're having another Messiah ben David. Both of them, who is the son of Judah, both of them are facing each other in this parasha. What begins at the end ends at the beginning. I repeat again. What begins at the end ends at the beginning. This teaches us that when Yehudas ben Yaakov approached Joseph ben Yaakov in the beginning of Parashat Vayigash, it symbolized a new beginning for the children of Israel, the era of exile, which will ultimately lead to the redemption from Egypt. When Yehuda and Joseph, which is Ephraim, next combine, it will be signal to the time of the final redemption of Israel, as written in the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 37, the Haftorah that we just read this morning. I repeat again, what begins at the end ends at the beginning. I'm trying to give us this understanding that when the two Messiah were standing face to face, that is Judah ben Yaakov was standing face to face with Joseph ben Yaakov, signaling the descending into Egypt for a time being, and the ending at the beginning is that next, when they are going to both meet, according to the Haftorah that we read, next time when they are going to meet, it will be a signal to the final redemption of his people. That will be a signal for the final redemption of Israel. For God said, I'm going to gather them from the ends of the whole world. He told the prophet Ezekiel, saying, make two wood, write upon it, and combine them together, and let them be one in your hand. For Judah and for Ephraim, for Joseph is Ephraim. And combine them together, and let them be what? And let them be one in your hand. When the son of your people will ask you, what is the meaning of this? Then you explain this and this and this unto them. For the final redemption, a signal for the final redemption of Israel is the returning back of the people of the northern kingdom, that is Ephraim. The combining of Ephraim and Judah together will signal the final redemption of the people, that is the final redemption of Israel from among the people of the world. So, the Parasha Vayigash said, revenge. Though the Torah warned us against acting on our emotions, it's hard to control the desire. In fact, a dogma of modern society preaches to us not to get mad, rather to get even. You see, the Torah is telling us that the Torah warned us against what? Against revenging. For the Torah said, vengeance is mine. That is God saying that vengeance is for God. Don't revenge. Do not revenge yourself, for vengeance is mine. Because you see, the things that we are used to is that, oh, he did me wrong, I do him wrong again. Hey, he slapped me once, I'm going to slap him 5 times. He did this to me once, I'm going to do that even worse, right? But the Torah warns us against our emotion, because we understand what emotion means. By the time you react with your emotion, and at the end, your eyes is clear, you're not blaming yourself. Say, oh, why did I do this? Am I the one that did this? You can't even believe yourself, because in the process of you acting upon your emotion, you are like a wild animal. The animalistic part of the man is controlling him. So you must have spoiled a lot of things. Then when everything comes down, you look, say, whoa, did I do this? Yes, you did it. You are doing it under emotion, under an external force, which is emotion. So the Torah always warns us against that, not to react upon our emotion, to do what I always give my story. When I was a little boy, I was born a stammerer. I stammered. And somebody that stammers, someone that cannot speak well, correctly, just like Moshe, someone that cannot speak perfectly well. And that gives me a lot of problem. At school, my mates, they mock me because it will take me like 5 minutes to pronounce the word father. And because of that, the emotion, the anger builds up in me, because they make fun of me, and I get so mad that I scatter everything. And at the end, I open my eyes, did I do this? I can't believe it. Then my mother took me to anger management. They were thinking because I have anger issue. But the issue is not the anger, but the issue is because I can speak. I wanted to speak, I want the word to come out, but it's not coming out. It just gets stuck here. I try my best. I hit my ass, I hit my hand, I hit everything just to voice out what my concern and my opinion, or the answer to the teacher, but it doesn't come out. And it gets me so upset and mad, because of that. They say you have to do this, all kinds of therapy and so on and so forth. But at the end, it was God that took control of it, because it looked all to my university years. Even though till now you can see the way I speak, I have to speak faster, or else if I speak very slow, it doesn't come out at all. So that's why some people say, you have to speak slow. If I speak very slowly, it gets stuck here. So that is my issue. So emotion is very dangerous. It's like an external force that comes upon us, and we act like a wild animal. And so the Torah speaks against that. Do not avenge yourself, for vengeance is mine. When we tend to avenge ourselves, we might avenge a little bit. But when we give the vengeance to the Almighty, you yourself, you will go and start begging God. Say, God, please forgive him. Because God will send his wrath upon your enemy. Then you yourself will go and start begging God, God, please forgive my enemy. Because when you tend to avenge for yourself, the vengeance is a little one. Why are you avenging? Give the vengeance to the Almighty. Let him revenge for you. And when he revenge for you, you will pity them. As Israel pity Egypt when they exit Israel. So, but Joseph disclosed his real identity in this weak portion, and despite a 22 years backdrop filled with excuses for anger, revenge, and retribution, he stayed calm and fulfilled. Surely, we should expect to find harsh word of criticism, if not act of payback. But we don't. After Joseph revealed his identity, and the brothers are shocked, rather than chastising his brother, Joseph appeased them. Come close to me, if you please, he said. And they came close. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother. It is me whom you sold into Egypt. And now, be not distressed, nor reproach yourself for having sold me here. For it was to be a provider that God sent me ahead of you. Bereshit chapter 45 from verse 4 to 5. He explained to them that the entire scenario was not even their doing, but part of a divine plan to contend with the world hunger. You see, Joseph, if it were us, would have been filled with anger, with revenge, with retribution. It is now my time. This is now my power. I am now the viceroy of Egypt. and these are my enemies. These are your brothers. Even though if you are not from the same mothers, but they are your blood, they are 50% of your blood. He said, now these are my enemies. These are the bad men, the bad guys that sold me into slavery. And now it is now my turn to punish them. These 22 years I've been suffering in jail, in prison, now it's my own time. That is what most of us will be doing. Now, when I was in pain, he laughed at me. When I was suffering, he couldn't help me. When I don't have the bread, I went to him. He sent me away. Now I'm a millionaire. Now I'm a billionaire. Now it is my time to deal with them. It's now my time to oppress them. It is now my time to kick my enemies and deal with them. But did we find that in the life of Joseph? No. Joseph saw it from a different perspective. Joseph saw it from a different prism, from a different view. He saw it from a spiritual understanding. He's telling his brother, don't condemn yourself. Don't ever you reproach yourself. It is not you that sold me. That's what he said. It is not you, but God. Then in a normal understanding, he said, how can God sell you? God, by God using his brother to sell him into slavery in Egypt. But he said, don't worry, it is God that brought me down here for me to provide for your need. For God have seen this time, that this time is going to come. And my job is to come ahead of you to prepare all the ground. Can you see that fantastic word? He didn't condemn them. He didn't kill them. He didn't say, I'm going to deal with you. But in the first sense, he tried them out. In the last chapter of Parashat Mikdash, he tried them out. He wanted to see if his brothers had repented, if his brothers have made a teshuvah, if they have changed their way of life, if they have already become a grown-up man in the spirit. Because you can be 200 years old and you're like a baby in the spiritual world. And you can be 5 years old and you are a mighty man in the spirit. It doesn't depend upon age. No. It depends upon the revelation of God. It depends upon the choice of God. Joseph was one of the youngest. He's the second to the last. But he was more advanced than his brothers, more advanced than the 10 elder ones in the spiritual realm. He understands what he knows that when this and this and this, what is going to be the result. But his brother that 20, 30 or 40 years older than him, they don't see what he is seeing. So that is the difference. So Joseph tested them out. He tried them out to understand, to see that these men are changed. These men have become a new creation. In the Messianic writing, they say to be born again. To be born again doesn't mean that when Yeshua HaMashiach told Nicodemus, he said, "Oh, what do you mean? Do I go back to my mother's womb and be reborn? I'm an old man. I am 80 years old." Even that is a teacher of Israel, a professor of the law. He doesn't even understand what Yeshua, who is just 30-something years old, was saying. So can you understand what I'm saying? That it is not by age. It is not because you are 200 years old then you understand everything about the spiritual world. It is God's revelation. It is God's gift. Yeshua said, Nicodemus, you being a teacher of Israel, you don't understand this? I do not understand. How can I be born again? Even though he's 80 years old, he's 90 years old. He said, he that is born of the flesh is of the flesh, and he that is born of the spirit is of the spirit. Joseph was born of the spirit, so he understands perfectly well. He knows what is to come. So he tried his brothers out to know that his brother has actually made a teshuvah. They have returned back home. Home to the living God. They have realized their mistakes and they have repented in their soul for their mistakes that they made against him. He said, okay, bring your younger ones. Do you have a younger brother? I said, yes. Do you have a father? Yes. I want to see him. You bring him. If you don't bring him, you are not going to see my face again. they get scared. That is Pharaoh. Remember, Joseph was like an Egyptian. They dressed Joseph in the color of Egypt. Put his eye, put his clothes on, with gold, everything. They could not recognize him. They could not recognize Yeshua ben Yosef. Because the Greek has covered him with their Greek clothes. That is the problem. The same way Joseph was covered in the form of Egypt, that his brothers could not recognize him. That is the same thing. My people could not recognize Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua ben Joseph, because they took him, the foreign powers took him, and they covered him in the clothes of the Greek. And if they cover someone with the clothes of the Greek, it's very hard to recognize him. They make a god, the Greek, after themselves. When the Torah said, and God made man in his image. But the Greek, they make a god after their own image. And they presented it to the people and said, this is your God, O Roman Empire. His name is Jesus. You have to serve him. And we said, no, we don't recognize this. We don't know him. We have only one God. Adonai Sebaot is his name. So we need to understand this correlation before in this parasha. Joseph tested them and he saw that they have repented and come back home unto their creator, that they have already changed. He make it plan. And Judah, the Torah said, and Judah stood up. He began to plead for his brothers. I took responsibility for this boy. I cannot return home without this young man. If I return home without this young man, my father, your servant, will die. He's even calling Jacob, the servant of Joseph. Remember the dream of Joseph, saying, and I saw the moon and the star, the sun and the moon bowing down unto me. People, they didn't understand, but Joseph understood. God revealed to him what is to come, and this is the time. Your enemy thinks he's going to injure you. Your enemy thinks he's doing you evil. Your enemy thinks he's destroying you, not knowing, but he's actually helping you to get into your greatness. But by selling him, they thought that dream will never come to pass. Then the wife of Potiphar then tried to make a mess of him. He said, no. He said, okay, let's put him into dungeon, into the prison yard. They thought by so doing, that would be his end. But actually, they are helping him out. Without him going into the dungeon, he wouldn't have met the servant of Pharaoh that he interpreted their dreams. Right? So we need to understand how this thing correlates all together. It's a chain reaction. It's a chain event. One leads to the others. We cannot separate them at all. They are holistic. If you look at the picture. So this is how Joseph got into the greatness. He get to the power, the rim of power of, and his brother could not believe it. What is going on? Joseph said, I am Joseph. Come, I am Joseph. The Torah said, and he revealed himself unto them. He showed himself that he's Joseph. He said, Joseph? Say, this is Joseph. No. This is a joke. It's not a joke. It is real. It is me, Joseph, your brother, that you sold into slavery in Egypt. Now they they were ashamed of it. It's like the earth should open and they should enter inside. That the man is going to come out, the man will come and avenge and slaughter them all. But Joseph saw it from a different perspective. Thus, Adonai had sent me ahead of you to ensure your survival in the land and to sustain you for a momentous deliverance. And now, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He had made me father to Pharaoh, master of all his entire household, and ruler throughout the land of Egypt. What type of man has the capacity not only to ignore horrible injustice totally, but to revel in it, saying that it was all meant to be, without the slightest display of bitterness or animosity? It takes an unique attitude about life. It takes a very unique attitude in life for us to see life in a different perspective. from a different prison, because the life of man, or the type of life that we tend to live in the physical world, is a life of this negativity. We allow negativity to attract us and to magnetize us and to use its gravitational power to pull us onto himself. When there is another option, the option of positivity, where we can allow ourselves to be magnetized or attracted to the force of positive. But because the way the mind of a man is built, his mind is to revenge. He did me this, it's time to pay back. But Joseph's mind was a different kind of a mind. His mind is attracted into what? Into positivity. You always see everything from the point of positive. And when you begin to see things from that point, all your life will become positive. But when you begin to see things from the negative angle, my brother, my sister, you are wasting your time. The negativity will begin to attract itself onto you. Then you begin to complain. You know what happened? I tried this, it doesn't work. I tried that, it doesn't work. I went here, it doesn't work. I went there, it doesn't work. What is going on with my life? What is my problem? Who somebody is pursuing after me? Somebody is doing bad things unto me. Nobody is doing that unto you, my friend. You are doing it unto yourself, because you let yourself open to the forces of negativities. Instead of you to attract yourself to the positive force, that he said that what type of a man, what a unique man can think about that and see this from a different perspective. Because his brother, their mind was a different, they are seeing it from a different perspective. The brother of Joseph, in their mind, the pay time has come. We are going to pay for all our iniquities. We are going to pay for all the evil, all the bad things that we have done to this guy. It is time to pay back. But Joseph is not seeing it from that point of view. He saw it from another point of view. That it is God that actually brought me here. You are just the instrument that God used. You don't know any other way. But by selling me, that is how God has planned it. And me, I have to come here to prepare all the ground, to make everything settled just for you to come and sit down with your wife, with your children, and come and enjoy. That is it. I have paid all the price. I went to jail 22 years. I was suffering. You are there in the land of Canaan, enjoying yourself with your wives and with your children. For me, I paid the ultimate price. See the picture of the Messiah. The Messiah has paid the ultimate price. We need just to come in and enjoy. The Messiah is not holding us into our sin. The Messiah is not holding us onto our iniquity. The Messiah is not holding us onto our transgression. But there is one thing, there is a but. We have to make teshuvah. Without us making teshuvah, we cannot enter into the land and enjoy. No way. We have to make teshuvah. We have to come and give our life and change that negative attitude into a positive attitude. Without us making teshuvah, which they call repentance, without us leaving behind all the garbage of the world, all the negativities of the world, and taking upon ourselves the Torah, I take upon ourselves the yoke of the Torah, and said, because it is said that it is a life, it's a tree of life to those who take hold of it. I mean, the Torah. So we have to take hold of the Torah. Then we can be able to enter into the land and enjoy what the Messiah has prepared for us. He has suffered. We don't have to suffer. He has paid the price. We don't have to pay the price. Joseph paid the entire price for his brethren, for his brothers. Messiah ben Joseph, he paid all the price. He's telling us, don't worry. Our point, your time, your life is to come and enjoy. So when you come and enjoy, you will enter into the land. The Haftorah of Vaygash in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, verse 15, is telling us the following. After the death of Shlomo HaMelech. The nation was divided between Rehoboam ben Shlomo and Yeravam ben Nabat. Rehoboam ruled over Yehuda and Benjamin, and Yeravam ruled over the other 10 tribes. Rehoboam was a direct descendant of David HaMelech, and Yeravam was a descendant of Ephraim. In this week of Torah, Ezekiel Hanavi prophesied the time when the divided kingdom of Judah and Israel will unite beneath the single banner of the family of the king of David. Our parasha begins with a confrontation between Yehuda and Joseph. Both were destined to be king over the Israeli people. However, Joseph's reign was limited to necessity and circumstance, while Yehuda will be an eternal as Israel itself. The reign of Joseph over Israel is temporal. Okay? The reign of Joseph over the kingdom of Israel is temporal, but the reign of Yehuda is eternal. Do you understand what I mean? Joseph, which is Ephraim, his rule, his power, his influence is a temporal one. But that of Yehuda, because the Torah said, even though their father Jacob said, the scepter shall not depart from Yehuda. The scepter of power, the scepter of the kings is in Judah. And Judah will reign over his brethren. And that is from where we have the second Messiah, which is going to come. Messiah ben David, which is going to be a conquering Messiah. A Messiah that is going to be the ruler of the ends of the universe, who is going to bring us back into the Torah, who is going to reveal himself unto us on the last day. The Yeshua that will reign eternally. It is important to note that the close relationship between Yehuda and Benjamin, even though they were not from the same mothers, was maintained throughout history. It gives additional meaning to Rashi on Pasuk chapter 40 verse 14 that explains why Joseph and Benjamin cried for each other at the time of their reunion. Rashi explained that the tears were for the eventual destruction of the Mishkan and the Beit Hamikdash. In truth, the removal of Adonai presence from our midst occur when there is hatred and divisiveness. What I'm trying to let us understand here that the bond between Benjamin and Yehuda is very strong, because when the land was divided, Benjamin and Yehuda were placed very close to one another, while the rest, the 10 other ones, were on the other side. So this gives a very close, a very intimate relationship between Benjamin and Yehuda, even though they are not born of the same mother. In a normal sense, we should have said that Benjamin should be very close to Ephraim, right? Because Benjamin and Joseph are of the same mama, right? But Benjamin is very close to Yehuda than his brother Joseph, Ephraim, which is Joseph. So what am I trying to say here? That it's a picture of what to come, or what has already passed, because we can see here that Yehuda stood up and he was standing defending Benjamin in this week parasha. Yehuda stood up and he was defending Benjamin. He said, I'm going to give my life to this man. I'm going to give my life to this young man. I cannot return to my father without this young man be with me. You rather put me in jail, but leave this young man alone. let this young man go home to meet his father, because I cannot see the death of my father, that my father going to his grave with what? With anger and with pain. Because my father will never live without this young man. As he said that their soul, both soul is born together as one. You see, so this was to foretell us what is to come. That Yehuda and Benjamin will be very, very close. While Ephraim, Manasseh, which are Joseph and the other 10 tribes, will be on their own. And he's saying here that if a kingdom is divided against itself, how can that kingdom stand? A house, Yeshua said, a house that is divided against itself cannot stand. The same thing here. A kingdom that is divided against itself cannot stand. So it shows the division of the what? The division of the kingdom. Because of what? Because of hatred. One that is a hatred in the midst of a family. One that is a hatred in the midst of a nation. One that is a hatred in the midst of a town. Such a town cannot stand. Or such a people, they cannot stand, because they've been divided by hatred. The tribe of Benjamin should have been close to Ephraim and Manasseh. Instead, the division of the land placed Yehuda close to Benjamin, allowing for a single unity between the two tribes that would allow them to share the actual structure of the Beit Hamikdash. It was as if Adonai was telling us that Yehuda's willingness to sacrifice for Benjamin at the beginning of Parashat Vayigash is the kind of unity that will maintain Adonai present in our midst. And if we go to Bereshit chapter 47, verse 27, it says, "And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they acquired property in it, and they were prolific and multiplied greatly." I repeat again. "And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they acquired property in it, and they were prolific and multiplied greatly." Now, let us analyze this word. Sometimes the rabbis always tell me that, "Rabbi, you overanalyze things too much. Every single thing you overanalyze everything." I said, it is a Jewish thing, you know. It is for the Jews to analyze. We analyze things a lot. We want to understand what is going on. We want to understand what God is talking about. I say, "But you overanalyze things, then it causes trouble a lot." I say, "No, I don't. It is not that it causes trouble, but you have to understand what God is teaching us here." So let us analyze and see what God is teaching us here, because there is a fantastic message I want us to understand from this one verse. Very, very fantastic one. I repeat again, you put it in your mind, please. "And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they acquired properties," right? "And they were prolific." They were many, they were numerous, they were prosperous, and they multiplied greatly. Now, the Hebrew word for acquire property is what? Is vayeachizu. That is the word. That is the Hebrew word to acquire a property, which is from the word ahuzah, which is commonly translated as an estate. In a story, the word is telling us that Israelites acquire an estate in the land of Goshen, right? The word ahuzah, however, has another meaning as well. It is from the root word ahaz, which means to grasp, to take hold, to grasp, to hold. Ahuzah can also mean that the land grasped the Israelites, that in some way they were trapped by the land. It has two meanings. The word vayeachizu, which means to acquire property, has two meanings. From the word ahuzah, which means that you can acquire estate, you can acquire a property, and the same word can mean that you are being trapped in the land. You acquire property in the land in one hand, which is positive, and the negative one is that you are trapped by the land. The same word. So let's see the differences. The two meaning of the word ahuza, estate, and grasp, teach us an eternal message. It is a lesson about what our attitude toward Egypt should be, and what our general attitude towards the world we live in should be. Our attitude towards Egypt, considering that Canada is like Egypt, considering anywhere that you are as Egypt, as far as it's not in the land of Israel. Even though considering the world that we are, this present world, as Egypt, because we came from somewhere. The soul descended from heaven and it came down here. This is a place of trial, just like Egypt, in another sense of it. So, when our soul descends into this world, it enters a foreign land, okay? When we are exiled from Israel, we are in a foreign land, be it Canada, US, Europe, anywhere, Africa, and so on and so forth. You are in exile because you are not in the land which God has promised your forefather. You are not home. That is not your home. The purpose of the journey to this foreign territory is to acquire an estate. Okay? I repeat again. The purpose of the journey is to acquire an estate. It is to find and to elevate the spark of holiness which are in every material object and in every corner of the planet. We elevate the spark by using physical objects for a meaningful purpose, thus infusing the world with holiness. I'm going to say it again. If you don't, maybe that is so fast, right? Let me elaborate it one by one. The purpose of the journey, of our journey to this planet, the purpose of your journey to Canada, the purpose of our journey to the United States, the purpose of our journey in Africa, the purpose of our journey in Europe, the purpose of our journey in Asia, as far as we are not in the land of Israel. Remember, the land of Israel is our home, okay? That is our home. That's where we belong to. That is our territory that the Lord God has given us as an eternal property, okay? But you are now not in that land. You are in a foreign territory. So what is the purpose of you in that foreign territory? The purpose of you is to acquire properties. The purpose of you is to amass property, wealth. The Torah said, and they were very wealthy and they were prosperous in the land, and they grew mightily. They purchased properties in the land. What's the purpose of us coming onto the physical world? We have a home in heaven. Our soul descended into this physical world is to do what? Is for us to elevate holiness. That in that property that we acquire, remember that everything that we see is made up of atom, the physical universe. Even though our body, your body and my body is made up of atoms. So therefore, we can do what we can spark the holiness of God on those material things, in the things that we see in the physical world. The property that you acquire, you can use it to glorify God, or you can use it to do another thing else. The property that you acquire, you can use it to exalt the name of the living God, to bless the name of the Holy One, blessed be He. And the same property, you can be grasped by that property, and then you are doomed. You can be trapped by the same property. Let's see. However, we find ourselves in the journey of life. We are charged with transforming that place into an estate of holiness. The property that we acquire here in the physical world, our job is to transform this physical world into an estate of holiness, where the divine rules, where the Spirit of God is in control, where God is the head himself. That is our purpose here on the planet. to spark this, the spirit, the power of the righteousness of the Holy One, blessed be He, whereby everything is in accordance as the will of God. As it is said in the Lord's Prayer that as will be done in heaven, let it be done on the planet Earth. As it is done in the spiritual world, let your will be done in the physical world. So our purpose here in this world is to do what? Is to bring about the holiness of the living God in the physical world, in the estate that we have acquired, and to make it an oasis of spirituality. To make this place an oasis of the physical world, an oasis of spirituality. God sent each of us to an exile with a mission to find and elevate the thirsty spark. So the purpose of us coming down here is for us. Our mission is to elevate the living God. That the eyes of everything we see that God indeed is God. And yet there is a danger in the journey. That is the positive part. And now let's hear the negative part of it. Because everything in the Torah is balanced. Torah is balanced. Both the physical and the spiritual. Both the positive and the negative. So let's listen perfectly well. Okay? This is very, very important. And for those that are listening on the internet, please listen perfectly well. I'm going to speak very, very slowly. And yet, there is a danger in the journey. Every journey has a danger that is always up and down. We have to be very, very careful. There's always a trap on the road. The danger is that instead of elevating the material, we are grasped by it. We are trapped by it. The danger is that instead of elevating the material world, we are grasped. We are trapped by it. That instead of our position to serving us, we serve our position. That instead of enjoying our estate, we are trapped by this estate. Instead of us elevating the spark of righteousness, the spark of holiness, the spark of the glory of the living God in the material world, we allow the material world to trap us. Every time, hustling and bustling. Oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. God is the second. God is not number one in your life. God is at the back. God is like, in a car we have what is called a spare tire. When your tire box, okay, you have a spare tire. You go, I want to go and change my tire. To some, God is a spare tire. They don't need him. When they need him, they come, oh God, and when everything is done, God, thank you, bye bye. I don't need you again. Until when you face another problem, then you run. Oh God, la. You see, to them, God, they don't even think about him. He's not interested. God is only interested when they're in problem. Okay? Instead of elevating the holiness of God in the material world, we allow the material world to trap us, to grasp onto us. Instead of our position to serve us, that is, instead of everything that we have acquired in this world to serve us, we are the ones serving them. Your money is to serve you, right? Your resources is to serve you, but you are the one serving them. It's done the opposite. And when you begin to serve your resources, then you are in danger, because your resources become number one, and whatsoever is number one in your life is your God. Okay? And then you begin to serve your resources. You begin to serve your money instead of your money serving you. Hey, I can't do without my money. Even though on the Shabbat I'm thinking about my share in that company on Shabbat. Or I'm thinking about my trade, on Shabbat. I'm thinking about, in New York Stock Exchange. How many stock do I have now on Shabbat? I'm only thinking about my share in that great company in Bell, in Microsoft, or in what do you call it? What's the name of this? Apple, That's the only thing that I think about. You run etasketa, you run everywhere just because of money. God, later, I'll think about you later. And we can see that this word is very, very important. It's really important. I want us to understand it. Vayeha Chazu. I want us to understand this word is very, very important, that it means two things. When the children of Israel begin to prosper in the land of Egypt, remember they lived how many years there? 400 something years, right? Over 400 years. They begin to prosper, and it is not all the 400 over 400 years that they were in slavery. No. Half of it, they were enjoying themselves. They acquired property. They were prosperous. They filled the land. Torah didn't mention it though, but who knows what happened? Did they forget God? Because their soul become fat. Because they begin to see that, okay, we're in control. I have everything under my control. I can do whatever I want. I am the one that is holding the land. The power of Joseph is the one holding the land of Mizraim. Without Joseph, Mizraim won't be saved. We begin to be pompous. We acquire pride upon ourselves. And then came a Pharaoh that does not know Joseph. It's not that the Pharaoh does not know Joseph, but the Pharaoh doesn't want to know Joseph. He doesn't care about Joseph. He doesn't care whatsoever Joseph has done. He's not interested about that. To him, number one is to keep Egypt safe. And he see in his mind, to keep Egypt safe is to deal with these people that are overconfident. The Israeli. And then came the slavery. And then came the suffering. And then the land that they have acquired traps them in. Because they left, they removed their hope upon God, and they put their hope upon properties. They put their hope upon material things. The Torah says, blessed is the man that put his hope in Adonai Sibaot. And cursed is the man that puts his hope in chariot. Cursed is the man that puts his hope in the man. For a man will fail you, but God can never fail. So why are we putting our hope in the properties? Why are you putting your hope in your financial life? Why are you putting your hope in you think because I'm wise, I'm smart, I'm the smartest man in the world. I'm even smarter than Shlomo HaMelech. I can do anything with my I'm so good. I'm the best scientist in the world. That is nothing. You shouldn't put your hope in that. Your hope should be in the Lord. The essence of exile is this: Ahuzah grasped and trapped by the land. Yet, Ahuzah is an estate also, capture the essence of redemption and freedom. We are all in the metaphorical land of Goshen. We, all of us, are in the what? In the metaphorical land of Goshen, even though we're in Canada, metaphorically speaking. We may feel that we are enslaved by the law of the material, that we are trapped by its grips. Yet, the Torah reminds us that we have the power to free ourselves from its gravitational pull, that the physicality which held us down yesterday can be redeemed and become the building block of a spiritual edifice, of an estate of holiness. I'm saying that we are all living in the metaphorical land of Goshen. We are in Canada. We are not in the land of Israel. We are not in our ancestral home. Some Jews are in the United States. Some Jews are in Africa. Some Jews are in Asia. Some Jews are in Europe. That is not their ancestral home. that is all the land of Goshen. Our ancestral home is in the land of Israel. We should not allow ourselves to be trapped by the land. That's what I'm saying. We should not allow ourselves to be trapped by our material power or strength. You discuss with some Jews in the United States. Let's go back home. They tell you, me? No, not going anywhere. I want to go into that desert where all the houses are tiny. Where am I going to live? Can't you see my mansion? Can't you see my estate? Can't you see how big my house is in that place desert? I'm not going there, even though there is no snow there. You want me to go and live in plus 40 degrees? No, I ain't going there. You see, that is the attitude. They have been grasped, they have been trapped by the land. And that is not the attitude that the Holy One, blessed be He, is telling us. He said we have to stand up and go back home. It is time. Because the time will come when we refuse. History do repeat itself. What happened in Israel, what happened during the Second World War, or what has happened before will surely happen again. Then, where are you going to run to? It's a running head-to-scatter, because you put all your hope, you put all your mind, you put everything in the materialism that cannot save. It will not save you. So, we are all living in this metaphorical land of Goshen. But the same word, Ahuzah, is the same word for a property into freedom. He said we can put ourselves away from its gravitational pull, from this negativity that is pulling us only onto materialism, and it's making us to think less and less about spiritualism, making us to think less and less about God, making us to only think about what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to dress, what I'm going to cover myself with, and God is saying, do not think about what you're going to eat and drink. Everything, all your needs, He knows them, and He's going to give it unto you according to His riches in glory. Don't be afraid. The only important thing that the Holy One, blessed be He, is telling us, grasp unto me. Click yourself unto God. That's not the enough grasp. To click yourself, to hold unto God. Do not let Him go. Hold unto Him very tight, and you will see the reward. For the reward is great and is bountiful. When a person understands his mission, no portion of its fulfillment merit undue emotion. In Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, verse 9, Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai tells us, if you have learned much Torah, do not pride yourself in it, for this is the purpose for which you have been created. If you learn much Torah, as this sage said, I am the king of the Torah, I can recite all the word of the Torah from A to Z. I'm so smart, I have all the Torah in my head. There is no question you can ask me, I don't have the answer for you. Everything I know. He said, do not pride yourself in that, for that is the purpose that you have been created. That is your purpose. So you shouldn't pride yourself in that. That is your mission. Your mission, our mission, is to preach the word unto the world. Our mission as Israel is to be the light unto the world. We shouldn't take the light and say, yes, I am the light. I don't want them to see, I am the light. I begin to be what? To be pompous and be proud. No. Our job is to be sober and to show them, just like Joseph was sober. Joseph saw everything from different perspectives, all the history of his life, everything that happened to him from the beginning to the end. He saw it from a different prism, not the way his brothers are seeing it. Because his brothers were afraid that the consequence has come, the pay time has come. But Joseph said, no, vengeance is God, not mine. My job is God has brought me here to prepare all the land for you, so that when you come, everything is easy, everything is prepared. That's your job, that's my job. The mobile phone that we're using, the television that we're using, all the things that we're using, somebody worked hard to achieve those. But all of us, we just take it, easy for us. But some people sit down night and day, performing experiment, working hard to make sure that that thing works. That is the same thing I'm saying here, my brothers. Joseph worked hard. Yeshua HaMashiach has worked hard. He has prepared all the land, everything unto us. It is our job. He just call us, come, and then come. But there is a but, as I said. The but is teshuvah. You have to repent of your dark side. You have to improve your life. You have to come unto Him unto God, saying, God, please forgive me. Have mercy upon me. I know I did wrong. I am wrong. Even though as Yehuda stood up, our fathers, has 4 wives, and this younger one has 2. They were 2 that their mother bore onto our fathers. One is dead, but he doesn't know that he was the one that is standing. One is dead, and this one now, man, my Lord, I can't allow him to go. Take me as a slave, but let him go. You see, a man, he said, I have taken up this it is my responsibility. It is your responsibility. It is our responsibility to be the light to the world. That is, we have no choice. Because that was the agreement we signed on Mount Sinai. That our forefathers signed before God. That He will make us the light of the world. And through us the whole world shall be blessed. Through us the whole world shall prosper. Through us the whole world will see the eternal light of the Holy One. Blessed be He. So my brother, my sister, it is your duty, it is my duty to rise to the challenge. Don't let us be those type of people that slumber. Don't let us be those type of people that come to the synagogue. Their job is just to sit down and warm the benches. No, we don't come to warm the benches. It's not that, okay, I come to the synagogue, I acquire a lot of knowledge. Now I can go and be boastful. No, that knowledge that you acquire is to share. Share with your brother and your sister. Share with your friends, your co-workers. Tell them. Let them see that light that shines in darkness. That they will say, oh, this man is different. Can I come and worship your God? Man, this your God is fantastic. Oh, Exiba, can I come and worship your God? Your God is a mighty God. Dan, can I come and worship your God? Your God is a great God. Johanna, can I come and bless the name of your God? Your God is wonderful. Rivka, can I come and exalt your God? Your God is a great king. So that is the purpose. Let them see that example. Let them see that light. Then they will come. Because they know that you are different. Shabbat Shalom.